things that happens when you believe in him as your Savior. The old man is taken out and a new person created in Jesus' image is put in us. Because by what you're, basically, when I hear what you're saying is there anything wrong with war? I mean, because in history it's strewn with it.
Of course. And that,
why is there anything, then why is there war?
well,
If there's something wrong with war, why does man go to war?
well, there's lots of different reasons for war. My question for you is, have you read Steven Pinker's book, The Better Angels of Our Nature?
No.
It's an excellent read. It's about 600 pages long. It's a lot of information. He does an excellent job of going through history. And you know, your odds of dying a violent death today are orders of magnitude less.
Depends upon where you are.
Well, that's
Definitely
partially
depends
true.
upon where you are.
That's partially true, but overall, there's virtually no place in the world today that's more violent, and you're more likely to die a violent death than you were 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. We are incredibly less violent.
Tell that to the people in Iraq. Tell that to the people in...
Well, I'm not saying that there aren't areas that are still violent, but there are. We have, through our application of reason, have been able to not only reduce the quantity, the length, the destructiveness of wars. Your small confrontations that used to result in death that weren't even chronicled in history are significantly reduced. Our lifespan is much longer. We're much more likely to get along with our neighbors and to resort to violence and vigilantism. Overall, when I'm talking about the entire Earth, society is incredibly less violent and better off than we were 2,000 years ago. It has everything to do with our secular ability to reason, the Enlightenment. We can talk about Kant and his philosophy of man as the agent for which he should not be used as a means for somebody else's purposes. And so that type of Enlightenment thinking actually led to the birth of the United States. Our founding fathers were very much influenced by those ideas.
I really, based on what I've seen statistically, I think, I don't know if I concretely agree with what you're saying, especially when you look at, say America, this is what we're more familiar with, that we know, at least from what I've seen statistically, since the last, say, 40 years, there's been a large increase in violent crimes, a large increase in murders. That there's been a decline in morality in different ways.
Well, let's assume that that's correct. Let's say that the argument, although that's backed up empirically with reams of data that says in fact we're less violent now than we were. Let's say we're not. Let's say we've been increasingly violent. Does that mean we've been increasingly violent since Jesus' sacrifice?
No.
I guess it didn't work.
No, we're just saying it's getting worse. But
that's man's history. You're talking, let's say what you're saying is true. You're talking about a window of time and say things are getting very bad or getting better. Well, Ahmadinejad is doing everything he can to get nuclear weapons and throw the whole Middle East into who knows what. So what do we say then? We come 3 years from now and there's been a war in the Middle East, nuclear weapons have been used, and millions are dead. What are you going to say then? That we'll think, man's nature, when you look at it through history, right to today, is violent. That there's violence, that there's war, that there's rape. And as far as looking at the United States and saying things are getting better, I don't call 55 million abortions getting better. So I call it a Holocaust. I call it horrible that children in the womb are, which you seem to not just gloss over like, well, there's less violence today. There's more violence.
Well, as a percentage of the population, the amount of violence is actually, like I said, orders of magnitude less.
No, if you're in the womb, it's magnitudes of times worse. The most dangerous place to be in the United States right now is in your mother's womb.
You know, it's interesting. We won't get into the whole abortion debate, but
another show.
Yeah, those countries where it's actually legal have the lowest numbers compared to, for example, the United States. But that's right. That's a completely different.
And they're also destroying. They're dying because they're not repopulating. Japan is a dying society. North Korea all of Europe is a dying society because they're not repopulating. And in fact, right now it's irreversible because they're not producing children.
The question we're
the
kind of
materialistic Western mentality that you're talking about is destroying itself by not having by aborting children, and not having children, they're self-destroying.
The question is, if we disagree on whether society in general is getting worse or better, regardless of which side of that argument you're on, the question is, how do we make it even better than it is? And we have a couple of options. One is by applying reason and understanding that there's such a thing as objective morality, and we can apply our reason and look at situations and determine whether the outcome improves well-being or reduces well-being. And we can intelligently and rationally move in that direction, okay, empirically, we can do that. Or we can look back at the book that says killing the Midianites was okay as long as, you know, they were having sex with animals and killing other children, other things we might disagree with, but it's okay to wipe them all out and take the virgins for yourself. To me, that's an easy choice. I know that was really wrong, and if I'm an all-powerful God, the choice would be easy for me. Stop them from having sex with animals and sacrificing children.
It was tried for 400 years.
And they obviously thwarted his will.
They were hardened their hearts, and judgment came.
1 second. You made a good comment that you said that you mentioned an objective morality.
Right.
So answering his question earlier, so you would agree that there are some definitive right and wrongs. Is it wrong to kill? To murder, we'll say. Aside from this verse, just morality.
It depends upon the circumstances.
Not just like war where you're killing. I'm saying if I come up to you and I say, I want to kill you,
right.
and I kill you out of murder.
In self-defense, I would say it's...
In self-defense, it's okay. But I'm saying if I murder you out of cold blood, just no reason given, I just murder you, that's dead wrong.
Yeah, but what you're doing there is you're also providing the circumstances with a scenario. Killing me, and you're saying for no other reason than wanting me dead?
Yeah.
Right. That's the circumstance part.
Okay.
But if you just say, is it right for you to kill me?
Murder.
Well, when you say murder, you're implying the circumstances.
To me, I say kill like in the realm of war, or self-defense. Murder, I'm saying cold-blooded. I just kill you with no reason at all, no self-defense. I'm just a psychotic lunatic, and I murder you. Is that wrong?
That's objectively wrong, based upon the circumstances you provide.
Okay. Is it wrong for me to steal from you if I stole your car? Would that be wrong?
In almost any circumstance I can imagine, I would say yes.
Okay.
But I'm not saying that there aren't circumstances where that would not be immoral.
Yeah, right. If I had to get somebody to the hospital, I know.
Right,
exactly.
I just did it out of sheer just pleasure.
Circumstance.
You know,
Right.
that's what I'm talking about with the sinful motive,
Right.
instead of out of just helping somebody. So if I'm doing this out of sinful motive, that there is indeed a right and wrong, and that's what we're getting at, is that we would say, from a biblical standpoint, that there is a definition, a starting point of morality that defines that, versus just over a time of rational thinking or reason to define that. And then on their standpoint, what they're saying, to connect the dots earlier, that if there is indeed a definite morality, that it's wrong to murder, it's wrong to steal, and so on, but that's part of what he mentioned earlier about God's 10 Commandments. That that's what God's talking about, where not going before the judge saying necessarily, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. Instead, somebody else going, I'll take the blame for it. That's what they're getting out of Jesus, emphatically did for us on the cross.
Well, let's, and just as a thought experiment, imagine a world where morality is dictated by our religious beliefs alone. Okay? You have virtually countless different religions, all with their own belief systems. From a practical standpoint, if one group says this is okay, and another group says that's not okay because their respective deities say it, how do you resolve those conflicts? I would argue that the only way to resolve it is when we apply our own secular, aside from religious, our own secular reasoning to make the determination ourselves what the correct or acceptable answer is.
That's been tried and it's failed miserably. The French tried it and it ended up with the French Revolution, the Age of Reason. It ended up with I don't know how many dead in France, and it ended up with a world war. I would say atheistic communism was the same thing. With no religion, when we were going to apply atheism, materialistic atheism to society, it ended up with the most horrible philosophy that's ever been put on the earth, and we're still reaping the horrors of it. Your thinking has been tried twice, and it's been absolute disaster for mankind.
Well, the problem with the communists, and I'm surprised we haven't mentioned Hitler, and he comes up in a conversation